There's a particular flavour of historical myth that's especially persistent. It's the one that suggests certain ways of being human were simply invented sometime around 1968, as if, before a certain point, the whole world was a terribly straightforward black and white film where men were men, women were women, and nobody ever had a single thought that would complicate the paperwork. The idea that queer history is a recent phenomenon, a modern invention, is one of the most successful and frankly lazy bits of historical head-patting we've ever concocted. It's a comforting bedtime story for a world that likes its boxes neat and its labels clear. It allows us to imagine the past as a simpler, more sensible place, entirely free of the beautiful, baffling complexity of human identity that we grapple with today. It's also, to put it in the technical language of a historian, utter cobblers. The notion that people just woke up one day in the mid-20th century and decided to be gay or trans or anything other than rigidly heterosexual is as absurd as suggesting nobody had ever tasted salt before the invention of the salt shaker. We've told ourselves that these are new ideas, new struggles, new identities. It might just be that we're suffering from a catastrophic loss of data. Tonight, you're not in the 21st century, scrolling through endless digital archives. It's Berlin, 1928. The air in the Tiergarten district is thick with the smell of coal smoke and wet leaves. You're walking towards a stately old villa, a building that looks like it should belong to a minor aristocrat with a gambling problem. But inside, it holds something far more valuable than dusty heirlooms. You're nervous. The piece of paper in your pocket, a referral from a doctor back home, feels flimsy, like it might dissolve in your sweaty palm. To be seen for who you are is a terrifying prospect, especially when the law of the land, a nasty little piece of work called paragraph 175, says that who you are is a criminal. But this place, this is the Institute for Sexualwissenschaft, the Institute for Sexual Science, and you're here because you've heard it's the only place in the world that might not see you as a criminal, a deviant, or a sinner. You've come here because you believe you are a woman, even though the world has spent your entire life telling you otherwise. And you've heard that the man who runs this place, a doctor named Magnus Hirschfeld, might just agree with you. Inside, it's not a sterile clinic or a shadowy den. It's a bustling hub of research, a library, a lecture hall, and a sanctuary. The central proof, the undeniable receipt of this world, isn't a single object. It's the archive itself. A library of over 20,000 books and journals, thousands of photographs and countless personal histories and case files, documenting the vast spectrum of human sexuality and gender. Think of it as the world's first physical internet forum, a collection of human experience so vast and varied, it defied every convenient social lie of the era. It was a library of souls, the tangible proof that for centuries people had loved, lived, and existed in ways the mainstream refused to acknowledge. The records here weren't just academic, they were the intimate stories of thousands who had sought help, understanding, or simply a place to be themselves. This collection was so complete, so revolutionary, that its existence forced the world to confront a truth it desperately wanted to ignore. And its destruction would be an act of cultural vandalism so profound its echoes are still felt today. This discovery, or rather this rediscovery of a lost world, made possible by the piecing together of fragments left after its violent end in 1933, reveals something extraordinary about the fight for queer identity and the fragility of history itself. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists and historians have found in the ashes, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in Weimar Berlin. We'll explore the haven they built, the science they pioneered, and the day it all went up in smoke. But before we begin this journey together, write in the comments where you are listening from. It's fascinating to learn where in the world you are. Also, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps more than you know. Now dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about the roots of LGBTQ history. Chapter 1. A Beacon in the Tiergarten. Our story begins not with a dusty ruin, but with a grand building in Berlin's Tiergarten district, a former palace that buzzed with a revolutionary energy. Opened on July 6, 1919, the Institute for Sexual Science was the life's work of Dr. Magnus Hirschfeld, a German Jewish physician and sexologist. Hirschfeld was a man impossibly ahead of his time. While the world was still clutching its pearls over the very idea of sex education, he was founding an institution dedicated to the scientific study of the entirety of human sexual life. He was a gay man who never publicly came out, yet dedicated his life to advocating for the rights of sexual and gender minorities, driven by the suffering he witnessed. He'd seen the tragic outcomes for his queer patients, who faced not just social ostracism, but the constant threat of legal persecution, leading many to take their own lives. The Institute was his answer, a place built not on judgment, but on the principle inscribed above its doors: per scientiam ad justitiam, through science to justice. Imagine stepping inside. The first thing you might notice is the sheer diversity of people. This wasn't just a place for academics. In its first year alone, the Institute conducted around 18,000 consultations for 3,500 people. It offered marital and sex counselling, treatment for venereal diseases, access to contraception, and sex education for the public. Many of these services were offered for free to those who couldn't afford them. But its most radical work was in its quiet, compassionate embrace of those deemed sexual intermediaries by Hirschfeld, his term for the naturally occurring variations in humanity that we would now broadly call LGBTQ+. For the first time, there was a place where you could speak honestly about your desires, your identity, without fear of being branded a madman or a criminal. The most compelling discovery to emerge from the Institute's history is not an artifact of stone or clay, but a human one. Her name was Dora Richter. Born in 1891, Dora knew from childhood that she was a girl, and at the tender age of 6, she even tried to remove her own penis with a tourniquet. As an adult, she lived a dual life, working as a male presenting waiter in the summer and living as a woman the rest of the year. This existence was perilous. She was repeatedly arrested for cross-dressing and served time in a men's prison. Eventually, a sympathetic judge released her into the care of Magnus Hirschfeld. At the Institute, Dora found not just a refuge, but a home and a job as a housekeeper. More importantly, she found a path to becoming herself. She became one of the first people in history to undergo a series of modern gender-affirming surgeries. In 1922, she had an orchiectomy. 9 years later, in 1931, surgeons at the Institute performed a penectomy and a vaginoplasty. Dora Richter became the first known trans woman to undergo a complete male-to-female gender reassignment surgery. She wasn't a case study to be poked and prodded. She was a member of the Institute's staff, a living, breathing testament to its mission. Her story, and the stories of others like her, were meticulously documented, becoming part of that unprecedented archive. They were the human heart of this grand experiment in science and justice. The Institute was more than a clinic. It was a community centre. It hosted lectures and film screenings, providing a space for education and social connection. It employed transgender people who struggled to find work elsewhere, giving them not just a salary, but dignity. It was a place where the English writer Christopher Isherwood came face to face with what he called his tribe for the first time, a realization that homosexuality wasn't a private quirk, but a shared human experience. This vibrant, thriving world was built on the foundation of knowledge, a belief that understanding could conquer prejudice. But as this beacon of enlightenment shone ever brighter in Berlin, a dark shadow was beginning to stretch across Germany, and in that shadow, the very knowledge the Institute sought to preserve would be marked for destruction. The greatest collection of queer history the world had ever known was about to become the target of an ideology that feared nothing more than the truth. Chapter 2: The Library of Souls. To truly grasp what was lost on that day in May 1933, you have to understand that the Institute's collection was more than just a library. It was a singular, irreplaceable archive of human experience. We talk of 20,000 books and journals, but that number, as staggering as it is, feels sterile. It doesn't capture the essence of what Magnus Hirschfeld and his partner Carl Gieser, who served as the archive's director, had assembled. This wasn't just stacks of medical texts, it was a library of souls. Within those thousands of volumes, photographs and patient files were the whispered confessions, defiant declarations, and quiet struggles of countless individuals from across the globe. Imagine walking through the halls. On one shelf, you might find centuries of medical and scientific literature on sex and gender, a testament to Hirschfeld's scholarly rigour. On another, there would be ethnographic studies, collections of erotica from different cultures and detailed diagrams. But the true heart of the collection was the personal histories. These were the patient records, the biographies and the questionnaires that Hirschfeld had meticulously collected over decades. Each file represented a person who had trusted the Institute with their most intimate truths. Someone like you, perhaps, sitting across from a doctor in 1928, finally able to articulate the profound sense of being in the wrong body. Your words, your history, your hopes for the future would have been recorded with care, not as evidence of a sickness, but as a valid part of the human story. This was, in effect, the world's first large-scale attempt to create a data-driven argument for LGBTQ+ rights. Hirschfeld's motto, "Through science to justice," was literal. He believed that if he could just gather enough evidence, if he could scientifically demonstrate that being gay or transgender was a natural inborn variation of human nature, then the prejudice and the cruel laws like paragraph 175 would crumble under the weight of reason. The archive was his arsenal. Every book, every photograph, every personal testimony was a weapon against ignorance. It was an audacious, optimistic belief in the power of knowledge to change the world. Let's put the scale of this loss into a modern context. Imagine if tonight a switch was flipped and every website, every forum, every social media group, every digital archive dedicated to LGBTQ+ history and community was permanently deleted. Every personal blog detailing a transition journey, every scanned photo of a 1970s Pride March, every academic paper, every coming out story shared in a support group, all of it gone in an instant. That is the scale of the cataclysm that befell the Institute. It wasn't just the loss of books, it was the erasure of a community's proof of its own existence. For 40 years, activists and historians have been on an archaeological dig, sifting through the conceptual ashes, trying to piece together this legendary lost collection. What fragments have they found? Whispers in other archives, references in surviving publications, and the tantalizing knowledge of what we can never get back. We know that the archive contained irreplaceable information on the early transgender surgeries, the development of hormone therapy, and the psychological support offered to patients. It was, in essence, the foundational text of modern queer and trans healthcare, and the Nazis burned it. The central mystery that lingers is not just what was in the archive, but who. How many Dora Richters were there? How many people found a lifeline at the Institute, had their stories recorded, and then vanished from history when those records were turned to ash? The burning of the Institute's library was a signal. It was a declaration that this new regime would not tolerate sexual and gender diversity. It was a violent act of cultural genocide, designed to wipe an entire segment of the population from the historical record. But they didn't just burn paper. They burned lives. They burned the evidence that people like you, in 1928 Berlin, were not alone. And they created a void, a gaping hole in our collective memory that we are still struggling to fill to this day. The fire was meant to be an ending, but the search for what was lost has become a powerful story in itself. Chapter 3. A Day in the Life of the Future. Let's step back inside the Institute, back to that day in 1928. What would a typical day have been like for you, someone seeking to align your body with your true self? It would have been a day filled with a strange, exhilarating mix of the mundane and the miraculous. Your morning might begin not with a medical procedure, but with a job. Like Dora Richter and several others, you might have been given employment and lodging at the institute itself. It was a practical solution to a common problem. It was incredibly difficult for gender non-conforming people to find work. So, you might spend your morning helping to clean the lecture hall or file papers in the very library that held stories like your own. The atmosphere would have been one of studious purpose, but also of community. You would see people from all walks of life coming and going, anxious young couples seeking contraceptive advice, writers and artists like Christopher Isherwood and W.H. Auden visiting out of intellectual curiosity, and people from all over Europe who had travelled for days, clutching referral letters just like yours. The Institute saw about 20,000 visitors a year. There was a constant flow of humanity, a quiet affirmation that you were part of something much larger than yourself. Your own appointments would be the focal point of your day. You would meet with physicians like Dr. Ludwig Levy-Lenz, a gynecologist, and Dr. Erwin Gorbant, a surgeon. Here, the conversations would be unlike any you'd had before. Instead of being told you were suffering from a mental illness that needed to be cured, Hirschfeld and his team believed that trans people were acting in accordance with their true nature. Their goal wasn't to change your mind, but to help you live more authentically. This might involve counselling sessions, supporting you as you navigated your identity. It could also involve hormone therapy. The Institute was a pioneer in endocrinology, using estrogen to allow trans women to develop softer features and grow breasts. And then there was the surgery. The Institute was the first clinic in the world to offer modern gender-affirming surgeries. For you, this would have been a multi-stage process, what was then called Genitalumwandlung. First, the castration or orchiectomy. Later, the penectomy, and finally, the vaginoplasty. These were experimental, groundbreaking procedures. Think of the courage that would take. There are no long-term studies to read, no online communities to consult. There is only the quiet trust you place in these doctors, a trust built on the simple, radical fact that they see you as you see yourself. The physical reality would be daunting, the recovery challenging, but it would be underpinned by an incredible sense of hope, the hope of looking in the mirror and seeing your true self reflected back. Beyond the medical, the Institute offered practical tools for survival in a hostile world. Hirschfeld worked with the Berlin Police Department to educate them on gender nonconformity. He would issue his transgender patients a medical certificate, a transvestite pass, which explained that their gender expression was aligned with their true nature. This pass, when presented to the police, could protect you from being arrested for simply dressing in a way that affirmed your identity. It was a small piece of paper, but it was a shield. It was a tangible form of recognition from an institution that wielded both scientific and social authority. It was, in its own way, a passport to a life of greater freedom and safety. Living at the Institute was to live in a small bubble of the future, a place where science, compassion, and justice intersected. It was a future where your identity was not a crime, but a fact. But just outside the doors of this sanctuary, the political temperature in Germany was rising, and the forces of intolerance were gathering strength, preparing to extinguish this small, bright flame of progress. Chapter 4. The Shadow Lengthens. The vibrant intellectual world of the Institute was an island of rationality in an increasingly chaotic sea. From its inception in 1919, it was a target for reactionary forces. It was denounced as Jewish, social democratic, and a threat to public morals. Dr. Hirschfeld himself, as a gay, Jewish pacifist, embodied everything the burgeoning Nazi Party despised. He was a frequent target of violence and caricature in their propaganda. But for over a decade, the Institute survived, protected by the fragile democratic norms of the Weimar Republic. That protection evaporated on January 30th, 1933, when Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany. The crackdown was swift. Within months, Berlin's gay clubs were purged, and LGBTQ+ advocacy groups were outlawed. The Institute, as the intellectual and spiritual heart of this community, was a prime target. The end came with chilling speed and organisation. On May 6, 1933, the German Student Union, a group of Nazi-supporting youths, marched on the Institute. They were accompanied by members of the SA, the Nazi Party's paramilitary wing, identifiable by their thuggish brown uniforms. Imagine the scene. You are there, perhaps in the library, when you hear the shouting from the street, the sound of marching feet, the aggressive chants, then the splintering of the front doors. The students and stormtroopers swarmed the building. This wasn't a random act of vandalism, it was a calculated looting, a plundering of knowledge. They ransacked the offices, the labs, and the archives. They knew exactly what they were looking for. Tens of thousands of items were stolen: books, research papers, medical diagrams, photographs, and, most cruelly, the deeply personal patient files. A plaster bust of Magnus Hirschfeld was taken, to be paraded through the streets on a stick as an object of ridicule before being thrown onto the fire. The international press watched as the library's contents were hauled out and loaded onto trucks. For 4 days, the Institute was occupied and systematically stripped of its soul. What became of the people inside? The historical record is tragically unclear on many fronts. We know that many staff members were taken to concentration camps. For Dora Richter, the Institute's first trans-surgical patient and long-time employee, the trail goes cold on this day. It is presumed she was murdered during the attack or died in custody shortly after. Her life, a beacon of the Institute's promise, was extinguished in the very act of its destruction. Her story, which should be a celebrated chapter in medical and human rights history, was almost entirely lost, another soul erased by the fire. The climax of this cultural assassination occurred 4 days later, on the night of May 10th, 1933. In the Babelplatz, the public square opposite the Berlin State Opera, the stolen treasures of the Institute were piled high. They were joined by over 20,000 other books deemed un-German, works by Jewish authors like Albert Einstein and Heinrich Heine, by pacifists, socialists, and anyone whose ideas were incompatible with Nazi ideology. In a torchlit, highly theatrical ceremony, propagandist Joseph Goebbels gave a speech as the pyre was lit. University students, the supposed future of the nation's intellect, threw armfuls of books into the flames. Magnus Hirschfeld was, by a stroke of luck, on a speaking tour abroad and was in Paris at the time, but he never returned to Germany. In a Parisian cinema, he watched a newsreel of the event. He saw the building he had poured his life into being desecrated. He saw his library, his life's work, the collective history of a people being turned into smoke and ash under the Berlin sky. It was more than the destruction of a building. It was the brutal public murder of an idea, the idea that all human beings in all their diversity were worthy of scientific study, medical care, and basic human justice. The shocking truth wasn't just that it happened, but that it was done with such gleeful, organized precision, celebrated as a cleansing of the national spirit. Chapter 5: Whispers from the Ashes. The destruction of the Institute for Sexual Science was not an isolated act of book burning. It was the opening salvo in a systematic campaign of persecution. The fire in the Babelplatz was a symbolic act, but its implications were devastatingly real. With the Institute gone, the intellectual and medical heart of Germany's, and indeed the world's, LGBTQ+ community was ripped out. The Nazis had not only destroyed the past, they had foreclosed on a future. The wider campaign against what they called sexual degeneracy intensified almost immediately. The infamous paragraph 175, which criminalized homosexuality, was expanded and more brutally enforced. An estimated 50,000 gay men were convicted under these laws. Of those, between 10,000 and 15,000 were deported to concentration camps, where they were forced to wear a pink triangle and were subjected to horrific treatment, including castration and medical experimentation. The progress Hirschfeld had made in educating law enforcement and fostering a degree of tolerance in Berlin was utterly obliterated. The loss of the archive sent ripples across the globe and through the decades. Imagine the field of Egyptology if the Library of Alexandria had contained not just philosophical texts, but every single document, map, and personal letter from the entire Old Kingdom. That is the magnitude of the loss for queer history. A whole generation of research into gender-affirming care, endocrinology, and the psychology of gender and sexuality was wiped out. It would take decades for science to rediscover what Hirschfeld and his team already knew. The world was set back, forced to restart from scraps and whispers. The search for what remains of the Institute's collection has become a form of historical archaeology. There is no lost city to excavate, only fragments scattered across the world. Some of Hirschfeld's own publications, already widely disseminated before 1933, survived. These give us the theoretical framework of his work, but not the rich detailed data of the thousands of case files. Occasionally, a piece of the puzzle surfaces. In 2009, a researcher discovered a trove of Hirschfeld's personal documents, including his passport, family letters, and photographs from his final years in exile in Nice. These items had been saved by one of his students and companions, Li Shu Tong. While deeply valuable for understanding Hirschfeld the man, they don't replace the lost scientific data. The Magnus Hirschfeld Gesellschaft in Berlin today maintains a library and archive dedicated to preserving what little can be found and continuing his work, a modern echo of the original institute. But the greatest mystery remains: what happened to all the individual stories? The thousands of personal histories are gone forever. However, dedicated historians have managed to painstakingly reconstruct a few lives from other sources. The story of Dora Richter was pieced together from surviving medical articles and notes. Recent research has even uncovered her baptismal record and traced her life after the Institute's destruction was initially presumed, showing she may have survived the initial attack and lived until 1966. Another patient, the Danish artist Lily Elber, whose life inspired the film The Danish Girl, also received surgeries connected to the Institute's pioneering work, though her procedures were primarily in Dresden. Her story survived because her diaries were published. Each of these reconstructed lives is a triumph of historical detective work, but they are the exceptions. For every Dora or Lily whose story we can partially retell, there are thousands of others who remain anonymous, their existence only noted in the inventory of what was burned. The ongoing research is a testament to the resilience of memory against violence. It is a slow, patient act of defiance against the Nazis' attempt at total erasure. We may never find a hidden cache of the Institute's books. The paper has long since turned to dust, but the search itself is significant. It is a refusal to accept the silence. Every fragment recovered, every life pieced back together, is a small victory. It is a reminder that you can burn books, you can destroy a building, but you cannot so easily extinguish the human legacy of a place that, for a brief, shining moment, offered a vision of a more just and understanding world. The archaeological adventure continues, not in the soil, but in the scattered archives and fading memories of a lost generation. Chapter 6: The Unbreakable Archive. We began our journey tonight with you, stepping through the doors of the Institute for Sexual Science in 1928, a person seeking a future in which your identity was not a source of shame or danger. That future, as embodied by the Institute, was violently stolen. The building itself was destroyed by bombing in 1943, and the site was eventually overgrown. For decades, there was nothing left but a patch of grass and a profound, echoing silence. But a library of souls once created can never be entirely burned. An idea, once given a home, can become unbreakable. The human legacy of Magnus Hirschfeld and his institute did not die in the flames. It was carried away in the minds and hearts of those who had worked there, visited there, and been inspired by its mission. Some of his former collaborators managed to escape Germany and continue their work abroad, particularly in the United States. Dr. Harry Benjamin, a friend and colleague of Hirschfeld's, built upon his studies of transsexuality, becoming a foundational figure in the field in America. The seeds of knowledge planted in Berlin took root in new soil. The scientific methods and the compassionate, human-centered approach that defined the Institute had an enduring effect on the future of sexual science. The fight for justice, which was at the core of the Institute's work, also continued. The Scientific Humanitarian Committee, the world's first gay rights organization, which Hirschfeld had founded in 1897 and which was housed within the Institute, was crushed. But the spirit of advocacy it represented would re-emerge decades later in the gay liberation movements of the 20th century. Many of those later activists had no idea that they were walking a path that had been paved and then bombed out years before. They were, in a sense, rediscovering a lost history of their own struggle. The story of the Institute connects to our modern experience in a way that is both inspiring and deeply sobering. Today we have digital archives, global communities, and medical knowledge that would have seemed like science fiction to the doctors in 1920s Berlin. Yet, the same forces of ignorance, fear, and hatred that led to the destruction of the Institute are still with us. We see echoes of the Nazis' un-German spirit rhetoric in modern campaigns against LGBTQ+ rights and education. The burning of books in the Babelplatz finds its contemporary equivalent in the banning of books from school libraries. The fight that Magnus Hirschfeld waged with science and reason over a century ago is in many ways the same fight today. The lives of the people from the Institute, people like Dora Richter, remind us that resilience is not just about survival, but about the courage to exist authentically in the face of overwhelming opposition. Her quiet determination to live as herself and the Institute's dedication to helping her is a powerful testament to the enduring human need for dignity and recognition. Their story, and the story of the thousands of others who passed through those doors, is not a tragedy. It is a story of a brilliant, beautiful, and brave community that was targeted for destruction precisely because of its success. They were building a better, more honest world, and for that, they were deemed dangerous. The true legacy of the Institute for Sexual Science is not in the books that were burned, but in the questions it dared to ask, and the lives it dared to affirm. It is an unbreakable archive of the human spirit. As our journey through the story of Magnus Hirschfeld's Institute for Sexual Science concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. Until our next archaeological adventure together, this is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Sweet dreams, fellow explorers. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, and may your rest be filled with wonder at the remarkable tapestry of human history. But for now, stay tuned, as we have a bonus story coming right up, read especially for you by our guest narrator.
The real reason medieval people were so dirty, it's not what you think. Let's be honest for a moment. When you picture the Middle Ages, what's the first thing that comes to mind, besides maybe a castle or a knight looking vaguely uncomfortable in a suit of armor? It's the smell, isn't it? We have this baked in, almost instinctual image of medieval people as being universally, unapologetically filthy. We imagine them shambling through mud-caked streets, coated in a permanent layer of grime, cheerfully oblivious to a level of personal odor that would get you kicked off a modern city bus. The common wisdom is that they were just ignorant about germs and, frankly, a bit lazy. They just didn't value being clean. It's a convenient little story that makes us feel wonderfully advanced with our morning showers and our baffling array of scented soaps. It's the historical equivalent of looking at an old black and white photograph and assuming the world itself was colorless. We see the lack of indoor plumbing, and we invent a whole narrative of blissful ignorance and a cultural love of filth. We imagine them shrugging and saying, well, another year without a bath, but at least the turnips are coming in strong. We've essentially decided that an entire millennium of human beings, our direct ancestors, just collectively gave up on the basic concept of washing. It's a comforting thought, in a way. It props up our own sense of progress, but it's also condescending, simplistic, and almost comically arrogant. It was all just a matter of priorities, and their priorities were wrong. The assumption is that if they just had the knowledge we have, they'd have been lining up for daily scrubs. But what if their decisions about bathing had nothing to do with ignorance, and everything to do with a cold, hard, and terrifyingly rational calculation of risk versus reward? What if a full-body bath wasn't just an inconvenience, but a genuine economic gamble, a public health hazard, and a morally questionable act all rolled into one? What if the choice to not bathe was, in its own way, an act of sophisticated self-preservation? The idea that they were simply dirty because they didn't know any better is completely wrong. Tonight, you are a master glover living in London in the year of our Lord, 1355. You are respected in your trade, your hands skilled at turning fine kidskin into delicate ladies' gloves and sturdy gauntlets for men-at-arms. You live in a cramped but respectable timber-framed house on a busy street, not far from Cheapside Market, with your workshop on the ground floor and your small living quarters above. You are, by the standards of your time, doing reasonably well. You are not a peasant, nor are you a lord. You are the backbone of the city's economy. And the single most complex logistical and financial decision you will face this month is whether or not you are going to take a bath. A full one. Because the choice is far more complicated than just feeling a bit grimy. The proof of this complexity, the historical receipts if you will, lie buried beneath the modern concrete and steel of that very same London. Archaeologists, digging near what was once the bustling center of your world, have unearthed the foundations of buildings that fly in the face of the filthy medieval stereotype. They found the stone and tile floors, the drainage channels, and the remnants of the heating systems of public bathhouses, known in your time as stews. These weren't forgotten Roman ruins. These were thriving businesses right up until the mid-14th century. They are the undeniable evidence that for a time, Londoners loved a good public bath. They are also the silent monuments to why they suddenly, and for very good reason, stopped going. Finding one is like finding the fossilized remains of a restaurant chain that was everywhere until a sudden, cataclysmic event made everyone terrified of eating out. This discovery, made in various excavations across historic European cities, reveals something extraordinary about the medieval relationship with hygiene. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in 14th century London. Now dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about the simple act of taking a bath. The first thing you're aware of when you wake is the cold. Not a gentle chill, but a damp, penetrating cold that seems to emanate from the very bones of the building. It's an early spring morning, and a thin, gray light filters through the waxed linen covering your single window. You burrow deeper into your straw-filled mattress, pulling the thick wool blanket up to your ears. Below you, on the ground floor, you can already hear the faint clatter of the city beginning to stir. The cry of a street vendor selling pies, the rumble of a cart's wooden wheels on the cobblestones, the distant, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer. This is the symphony of your world, and it starts before the sun has fully committed to the day. You don't have the luxury of lingering. Time is money, quite literally. You swing your legs out of bed, your bare feet hitting the rough, cold wooden floorboards. The first order of business, every single day, is hygiene. Not the full-body immersion we dream of, but the practical, essential kind. On a small wooden stand next to your bed is a ceramic basin and a pitcher of water. The water is achingly cold, hauled up from the communal well at the end of the street late last night by your apprentice. You pour a little into the basin. You don't use soap for this. The lye-based soap you have is harsh and expensive, reserved for laundry and the most stubborn grime. Instead, you use the cold water and a rough linen cloth to wash your face and hands. You scrub vigorously, the shock of the cold water a brutal but effective alarm clock. This isn't about killing germs. The concept of microscopic organisms causing disease is centuries away. For you, cleanliness is about two things: appearance and God. Your hands must be clean before you pray, and they must be clean before you handle the expensive, butter-soft leather that is your livelihood. A smudge of soot or grease on a piece of fine doeskin could ruin a whole day's work. It is also about social standing. To appear in public with a dirty face and hands is to signal that you are slovenly, perhaps a drunkard, someone who has lost control of their life. It's a small act, this morning wash, but it's a critical one. It's your daily declaration that you are a respectable, God-fearing, and professional man. You dry your face on the cloth and comb your hair with a sturdy comb carved from animal bone, its teeth still sharp and effective after years of use. You are now ready to face the world, or at least the trip downstairs to your workshop. You pull on your clothes. A simple linen undertunic, followed by a heavier wool tunic over it, belted at the waist. Woolen hose for your legs, and simple leather shoes. Every item of clothing represents a significant investment. Linen is laborious to produce, and wool is the lifeblood of England's economy. You own 2 sets of these clothes, one for daily wear, and a slightly better, less patched set for Sundays and official guild meetings. The idea of a fresh outfit every day is an absurdity beyond comprehension. You do what you can to keep them clean. You brush the mud and dust off them nightly. You air them out. When they become truly soiled, they are washed, a monumental task involving hot water, lye soap, and a lot of back-breaking scrubbing, but that's a seasonal chore, not a daily one. For now, you just hope you don't spill any of the dyes you'll be working with today. Downstairs, the workshop smells of leather, wax, and the faint, ever-present scent of the city itself, a complex aroma of wood smoke, livestock, baking bread, and something vaguely unpleasant from the drainage channel that runs down the middle of the street. Your apprentice, a boy of 14 named Thomas, is already there, sweeping the floor. His own morning ablutions would have been even simpler than yours. A quick splash from a bucket. You set to work, your mind focused on the task at hand, cutting a new batch of fine gloves for a wealthy merchant's wife. Your hands, now clean, move with precision and confidence across the supple leather. This is the rhythm of your life, a rhythm dictated by craft, by daylight, and by the relentless demands of the urban economy. The thought of a full bath is a distant whisper, a luxury item on a long list of more pressing concerns. But the week is young, and the grime of London has a way of accumulating, forcing you to eventually confront the decision you've been putting off. You know it's coming, but for now, there are gloves to be made. Your days are long and dictated by the sun. You work from dawn until dusk, with a short break for a midday meal. This meal, like your morning routine, is governed by a quiet, unspoken code of hygiene. Before you eat your hunk of dark bread and slice of hard cheese, you wash your hands again. This is non-negotiable. It's a rule reinforced by your guild, by the church, and by simple common sense. Everyone knows that to eat with dirty hands is to invite sickness into your body. This isn't based on germ theory, but on the ancient theory of humors and miasmas. The belief is that illness is caused by bad air, or miasma, and by imbalances in the body's 4 essential fluids. Filth is seen as a source of this bad air, something that can be ingested or absorbed, throwing your humors into chaos. So, you wash your hands. Again, it's cold water from the pitcher in the corner of the workshop, but it's a deliberate and important ritual. Social life, what little there is of it after a long day's work, also has its rules. If you visit the local tavern for a cup of ale, you're expected to present a clean face and hands. You're part of a community of craftsmen, and maintaining standards is everything. Your personal appearance reflects on your guild and your trade. A sloppy glover, it is assumed, makes sloppy gloves, so you maintain the standard. The small, daily acts of cleaning are the bedrock of your social and professional identity. It's a constant, low-level effort, a battle against the pervasive dust and grime of the city. The city itself is the main antagonist in your quest for cleanliness. London in 1355 is a living, breathing, and often overflowing organism. The streets are narrow and unpaved for the most part, a mixture of dirt, gravel, and cobblestones. When it rains, they become a thick, clinging mud. When it's dry, they generate a fine dust that settles on everything. And then there's the waste. While there are rules about waste disposal, you're supposed to pile it up and wait for the official cartmen, the rakers, to haul it away. The rules are not always followed. People toss household refuse into the street. Butchers and tanners, your not-so-distant neighbors, produce prodigious amounts of organic waste, and some of it inevitably finds its way into the public thoroughfares. The smell can be overwhelming, especially in the summer heat. This is the environment you walk through every day. The hem of your tunic is permanently stained with the dirt of the street. Your shoes are caked in it. Keeping your body clean feels like trying to stay dry in a rainstorm without an umbrella. It's a constant uphill battle, and the most you can hope for is to keep the worst of it at bay. You even see attempts at public sanitation. There are public latrines, or gongs, built over the Thames or its tributaries. Teams of gong farmers are tasked with cleaning them out, a truly wretched job usually performed at night. The city council passes endless regulations about keeping the street in front of your house clean. But with a population of tens of thousands packed into a small walled area, it's an almost impossible task. The very air feels thick with the smoke from countless hearths and forges. It's in this context that the idea of a public bathhouse, a stew, sounds like a gift from heaven. A place to escape the grime, to soak in truly hot water, and to feel properly clean for the first time in weeks, or even months. Before the Great Sickness, these places were common. You remember them from your youth, just a decade or so ago. They were social hubs, places to meet with friends, conduct business, and enjoy a level of luxury that was impossible to achieve at home. You could pay a fee and get a tub of hot water, a bundle of fresh herbs to scent it, and perhaps even a meal and a cup of wine. It was a glorious civilized escape, but everything changed after the pestilence. The memory of it hangs over the city like a permanent fog, and it has fundamentally altered your relationship with the very idea of public bathing. The desire is there, a deep-seated yearning for the simple pleasure of being clean. But now, that desire is tangled up with a profound and justifiable fear. The Great Pestilence of 1348 is not a distant historical event for you. It is a raw, vivid memory. You were a young man, just finishing your apprenticeship, when it swept through London. You saw the death carts piled high with bodies. You saw families disappear in a matter of days. You lost friends, neighbors, and 2 of your own siblings. Nobody knew what caused it, but theories were everywhere. Was it a punishment from God? A poison in the air? An alignment of the planets? The physicians, with their theories of humors and miasmas, offered what little explanation they could. They believed the plague entered the body through the pores of the skin, carried on corrupted air. And what opens the pores more than a hot bath? Suddenly, the public bathhouses, the stews, transformed from places of health and relaxation into suspected death traps. The very act of soaking in hot water, once seen as a way to cleanse the body, was now reframed as a dangerous invitation. You would be opening your body's defenses, making yourself vulnerable to the pestilential air that surely lingered in such crowded, steamy places. The authorities, in a panic, began to shut them down. The church, which had always been a little suspicious of the moral character of the bathhouses anyway, loudly proclaimed them as sources of both physical and spiritual contagion. It wasn't just the fear of miasma. The bathhouses had always walked a fine line. They were social centers, yes, but many had a reputation for being fronts for prostitution. The term stews became synonymous with brothels. For a respectable guild member like you, visiting a bathhouse was already a slightly risky proposition for your reputation. After the plague, that moral ambiguity hardened into outright condemnation. To frequent a stew was not only to risk your life, but also to risk your soul and your good name. And so, the bathhouse culture that had flourished for centuries withered and died in the space of a few years. The beautiful tiled rooms fell into disrepair. The great cauldrons used to heat the water grew cold and rusted. Archaeologists digging centuries from now will find their foundations and wonder at the vibrant bathing culture that once was. But they will also see the signs of their sudden abandonment. They will see the layers of disuse that accumulate right after the mid-14th century, a silent testament to the terror that emptied them. So now, in 1355, your options for a full bath are severely limited. The public option is gone, tainted by fear and moral panic. This leaves you with only one real choice: to bathe at home. And that, you know from bitter experience, is a monumental undertaking. It's not a relaxing spa day. It's a major domestic project that requires planning, expense, and a significant amount of hard physical labor. It's a project that makes you question, every single time, whether the feeling of being clean is truly worth the staggering effort it requires. It's a cost-benefit analysis that we, in our world of instant hot water, can barely comprehend. The desire for cleanliness is fighting a war on 2 fronts: the lingering fear from the past and the brutal economic and logistical realities of the present. And as the week wears on, and the London grime works its way deeper into your clothes and skin, you feel the pressure to make a decision building. The weekend is approaching, and with it, the social obligation to be at your most presentable for church. The great bath debate can no longer be postponed. Let's break down the economics of your bath. This is where the fantasy of medieval life collides with a spreadsheet of inconvenient truths. First, you need a tub. You own one. It's a large wooden half-barrel stored in the small yard behind your workshop. It's heavy, cumbersome, and prone to leaking if it's not been soaked recently. Getting it from the yard, up the narrow stairs, and into your small living space is a 2-man job. You'll need to pull Thomas, your apprentice, away from his work for a good half hour just to wrestle the thing into position. That's half an hour of lost productivity, which means lost income. Next, and most critically, you need water. Lots of it. The tub holds, let's say, 30 gallons. The communal well is 100 yards down the street. Your bucket holds 2 gallons. That's 15 trips. 15 trips slogging down a crowded, muddy street, waiting your turn at the well, hoisting a heavy bucket, and slogging back, trying not to spill too much. Again, this is a job for Thomas. It will take him the better part of an hour of his time that you are paying for, an hour he is not stretching leather, or running errands for the workshop. The cost of labor is very real. After the pestilence, labor is scarcer and therefore more expensive than ever before. You feel every minute of it. Now for the most expensive component, heat. A cold bath in the English spring is not a luxury. It's a form of torture. You need hot water. This means you need a fire, a big one. Your small hearth is used for cooking and some warmth in the evening. But to heat 30 gallons of water, you need to keep a roaring fire going for a long time. This requires fuel. And fuel, firewood or charcoal, is one of the single biggest expenses for any London household. The forests around the city are carefully managed and owned by the crown or powerful lords. Wood is not free. You have to buy it from licensed woodmongers at the market. A bundle of firewood sufficient to heat your bathwater could cost as much as a day's wages for a simple laborer. For you, a master craftsman, it's a significant chunk of your weekly profit. It's the 14th century equivalent of deciding whether to fill up your car with premium gas or just pay your electric bill. So you have the tub in place, the water hauled, and the fire blazing. You'll heat the water in your largest cooking pot, one bucket at a time, and carefully transfer it to the tub. This is a slow, tedious, and slightly dangerous process. One slip could mean a serious burn and a flooded floor, which would not endear you to your downstairs neighbors, who happen to be you. Finally, you might want some soap. You have a small block of hard, grayish soap. It was made by a local soap boiler, using animal fat, usually mutton, tallow, and ash. It doesn't smell like lavender or sandalwood. It has a greasy, slightly acrid smell of its own. It's effective at cutting through grime, but it's harsh on the skin. Fancier, oil-based soaps from Castile or the Levant are available, but at a price that would make your eyes water. They are for nobles and rich merchants, not for working craftsmen. Your block of tallow soap is a practical tool, not a luxury good. By the time everything is ready, the tub is full of steaming, precious water, and the room is thick with condensation. Several hours have passed. You have expended significant time, labor, and money. All of this just to wash yourself. Now you can understand why this is a monthly, or even less frequent event. It's not because you enjoy being dirty. It's because being clean is an astonishingly expensive and labor-intensive proposition. It is a calculated decision, weighed against other needs: food, rent, materials for your workshop, new shoes for Thomas. In a world of tight margins, a hot bath is a true extravagance. And yet, the desire remains. As Friday afternoon wears on, you make the decision. You will have a bath tomorrow, on Saturday, to be clean for church on Sunday. You tell Thomas to start hauling the water before the day is out. He groans inwardly, but he knows better than to complain. You head to the market yourself to buy an extra bundle of firewood, handing over the silver pennies with a wince. The woodmonger gives you a knowing look. He knows the signs of a man planning a bath. It's a look that says, "Ah, a big spender." That night, you lie in bed, the sounds of the city quieting down. You think about the expense and the effort. You think about the comforting warmth of the water. You also feel a tiny, nagging flicker of the old fear. The physician's warnings about open pores and bad air still echo in the back of your mind, a legacy of the great trauma the city endured. It feels foolish, almost decadent, to be doing this. But the thought of standing in church on Sunday, feeling thoroughly, deeply clean, is a powerful motivator. It's a feeling of renewal, of order, of washing away the chaos of the world, if only for a day. It is a symbol of your success, your control over your own small corner of the world. It's worth the price. You hope. Saturday arrives, and with it, bath day. The entire household, which consists of you and Thomas, is mobilized for the operation. The morning is spent on the preparations you planned yesterday. The great tub is wrestled into the main living area, a space that serves as your kitchen, dining room, and sitting room. The floor around it is covered with extra rags to soak up the inevitable spills. Thomas begins his long pilgrimage to and from the well, his arms and back aching with each trip. You, meanwhile, get the fire in the hearth roaring, a task that requires more skill than one might think. You need to build it up to a high sustained heat without creating too much smoke, which would quickly fill your small, poorly ventilated quarters. The pot goes on the fire, and the slow process of heating the water begins. Bucket by bucket, the steaming water is carefully ladled into the tub. The room grows humid and warm, a stark contrast to the damp chill outside. You decide to add a small luxury. You have a little linen bag filled with dried herbs, chamomile and mint, that you bought from a woman at the market. You toss it into the tub. The steam begins to carry a faint, pleasant scent, a welcome change from the usual smells of leather and wood smoke. By midday, everything is ready. The tub is full. The water is a perfect, inviting temperature. You dismiss Thomas for a few hours, giving him a penny to buy himself a meat pie and some ale at a cook shop. This next part is a private ritual. You bar the door to your quarters. Privacy is the ultimate luxury, and you are about to indulge in it. You strip off your woolen and linen garments, the clothes you have worn all week. The feeling of the cool air on your skin is a prelude to the warmth to come. You step into the tub. The sensation is sublime. The hot water envelops you, and you let out a long, involuntary sigh of pure pleasure. The tension in your shoulders, the ache in your back from leaning over your workbench all week, begins to melt away. For the first time in what feels like an eternity, you are truly warm, all the way through to your bones. You sink down until the water is up to your neck, the herbal scent rising with the steam. This is more than just getting clean. It is a profound, almost therapeutic experience. You sit and soak, letting the heat do its work. The dirt and grime of the city, the accumulated sweat and dust of a week's hard labor, loosens its grip. After a while, you take up your block of tallow soap and the rough linen cloth, and you begin to scrub. You wash your hair, your arms, your feet. The water in the tub slowly turns a murky gray, a satisfying testament to the effectiveness of your efforts. It's the visual proof that the expense and labor were not in vain. Lying there in the tub, in your self-made sanctuary of steam and warmth, your mind wanders. You think about your business, about the order for a dozen gauntlets you need to finish next week. You think about the rising price of good quality leather. You think about the sermon the priest will give tomorrow. In this moment of quiet solitude, you are not just a medieval craftsman. You are a man taking a well-deserved break, a human being enjoying a moment of comfort and peace in a world that offers precious few of them. It's a feeling that transcends time. The specific challenges are different. You worry about the price of firewood. We worry about the price of electricity. But the fundamental human need for these moments of restorative peace is exactly the same. The water eventually begins to cool. Your skin is pink and wrinkled. You know it's time to get out. You stand up, dripping, and grab a piece of clean, dry linen to towel yourself off. The air in the room feels shockingly cold on your clean skin. You dry yourself quickly and pull on your best clothes, your Sunday set, which feel wonderfully fresh against your body. The feeling is one of complete renewal. You feel lighter. You feel civilized. You feel ready to face God and your neighbors. But the work is not over. Now comes the cleanup. The 30 gallons of dirty, lukewarm water cannot simply be wished away. It must be bailed out, bucket by bucket, and hauled downstairs and out to the street's central drainage gutter. This is another long, back-breaking task for Thomas when he returns. The tub must then be scrubbed and wrestled back down into the yard. The hearth must be cleaned. By the time it's all done, the sun will be setting. An entire day, a significant amount of money, and the labor of 2 people, all for one bath. As you sit down for your simple evening meal, feeling the clean linen of your shirt against your skin, You reflect on the day. Was it worth it? Absolutely. But you also know with absolute certainty that you will not be doing this again next week or the week after. It will be a month, maybe more, before you can justify this expense and effort again. In the meantime, you will return to the daily routine. The cold water in the basin, the scrubbing of hands and face, the constant low-grade battle against the encroaching grime. You have won a major victory today, but you know the war is endless. This single, luxurious bath has to last you. It is a reset, a return to a baseline of cleanliness from which the slow decline will begin all over again tomorrow. And this is the reality that the simple stereotype of the dirty medieval peasant completely fails to capture. It wasn't a lack of desire. It was a profound understanding of cost. The next morning, you walk to church. The air is crisp, and the streets are already busy. But today, you walk with a different posture. You feel clean, and you feel confident. You greet your fellow guild members, other craftsmen and merchants, with a firm nod. You can see they too have made an effort. Their clothes are brushed, their faces are clean. Some, you suspect, may have also undertaken the great bathing ritual of Saturday. There's an unspoken understanding among you. To be clean on Sunday is a sign of respect for God, for your community, and for yourself. Inside the church, the air is cool and smells of old stone, incense, and beeswax candles. You find your usual spot. The priest begins the Latin Mass, his voice echoing in the high, vaulted space. Your mind is clear. The physical renewal of the bath feels like a kind of spiritual renewal as well. You feel prepared to listen, to pray, to reflect. This is the ultimate purpose of your Saturday ordeal. It wasn't just about washing off dirt. It was about preparing yourself for this moment of communal sanctity. After the service, you linger outside, chatting with other members of your guild. Business is discussed, local gossip is exchanged. It is here that your cleanliness matters most. It is a social signal. It says you are prosperous enough to afford the firewood. It says you are organized enough to manage the logistics. It says you are pious enough to want to be clean before God. In a world with few ways to display status, this is a subtle but powerful one. It is the medieval equivalent of wearing a well-pressed suit or driving a clean car. It communicates competence and success. But as you walk home, the reality of the city begins to reassert itself. A cart rumbles past, splashing a bit of muddy water near your shoes. The smell of a nearby tannery, a scent you are so used to you barely notice it most days, seems particularly pungent to your clean senses. The dust from the street begins to settle on your best tunic. The pristine feeling is already beginning to fade. By the end of the day, the battle will have been rejoined. This is the cycle of your life. It's a constant negotiation with your environment. You are not ignorant of hygiene. In fact, you are acutely aware of it, precisely because it is so difficult to maintain. You have a sophisticated system of cleanliness, a hierarchy of actions. At the bottom are the daily, essential ablutions of the hands and face. In the middle is the periodic, laborious washing of clothes. And at the very top, the peak of the pyramid, is the full-body, hot water bath, a rare, expensive, and cherished event. The archaeologists who, centuries from now, excavate the foundations of the public stews will be uncovering only one part of this story. They'll see the evidence of a thriving bath culture that was abruptly cut short. They might theorize about the reasons plague, economic shifts, changing social mores. What they won't see is the quiet domestic drama that replaced it. They won't see you and Thomas wrestling a wooden tub up a narrow staircase. They won't be able to measure the cost of the firewood you bought at the market. They won't feel the sublime relief of that first moment the hot water touches your skin. They can, however, find other clues. In the buried rubbish pits of your London, they'll find the small, intimate tools of daily grooming that tell the other half of the story. They'll find beautifully carved bone combs, just like yours. Their teeth still fine enough to deal with tangled hair and the ever-present threat of lice. They will find metal tweezers and tiny ear scoops, small, personal items that speak to a daily concern with appearance and hygiene that goes far beyond the occasional bath. These artifacts are the proof of your constant, low-level effort. They are the evidence that you and your contemporaries care deeply about cleanliness, even if the methods and opportunities were vastly different from our own. They show that you did the best you could with the resources you had, in a world that was actively working against you. The absence of a daily shower was not a moral failing or a sign of ignorance. It was a rational response to a challenging set of circumstances. Your life was a testament not to filth, but to a resilient and practical struggle for dignity and cleanliness in a very, very dirty world. And looking back, that struggle is perhaps far more impressive than our effortless modern-day routine. As our journey through the realities of a 14th century bath concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry, woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. This is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Medieval marriage, the brutal business deal you slept through in history class. Let's talk about medieval marriage. Go on, picture it. You're probably thinking of something out of a storybook. A knight in shining armor, a lady with a pointy hat and a handkerchief, some light chivalry, maybe a ballad sung by a lute-playing bard in tights. It's all very romantic, very pure, a sort of historical Instagram filter where everyone is noble, and the biggest problem is which goblet to use for the celebratory mead. Our entire modern fantasy genre is built on this foundation. The idea that the past, especially the medieval part, was a theme park of honorable quests and true love conquering all. We've been fed this diet of sanitized history for so long, we've come to believe it. We see a painting of a medieval couple, hands clasped, looking pious, and we project our own ideas of partnership and affection onto them. We assume they're gazing at each other with quiet devotion, contemplating a future of mutual support and shared dreams. In reality, he's probably calculating the value of her father's sheep, and she's wondering if he'll beat her more or less than her brother did. The entire concept of marrying for love would have been considered at best a dangerous and destabilizing form of madness. It was an idea for poets and fools, not for sensible people trying to survive a world where the average life expectancy was around 35, and your main healthcare provider was a woman in the village who recommended rubbing a turnip on things. The truth is, for the vast majority of people in the Middle Ages, marriage wasn't a romantic union. It was a property merger. It was a business deal, a strategic alliance, a cold, hard, economic transaction designed to consolidate land, secure labor, and ensure the orderly transfer of a pig from one family to another. It had all the warmth and intimacy of a corporate takeover, but with more plague and worse plumbing. The personal happiness of the two individuals being shackled together for life was, to put it mildly, not a top priority. In fact, it barely made the list. Love had absolutely nothing to do with it. Tonight, you are Agnes. The year is 1345, and you are standing in a field in Yorkshire, England, that is perpetually, soul-dampeningly wet. It's your field. Or rather, it will be. It's the 3-acre plot of decent, if muddy, farmland that you are set to inherit from your father. You are 12 years old, and that field, that humble patch of dirt, makes you one of the most eligible women in the village. Not your kindness, not your skill at spinning wool, not your surprisingly robust immune system that's gotten you this far. It's the land. You are a walking, talking title deed, a human-shaped asset, and the negotiations for your transfer have just been completed. The proof of your new reality isn't a diamond ring or a flowery proposal. The artifact that seals your fate is a piece of parchment tucked away in the manorial court records. It's a marriage contract written in cramped, spidery Latin by a clerk who was probably paid in ale. It feels rough and stiff, like dried animal skin, because that's exactly what it is. And on it, in faded iron gall ink, is the inventory of what your father is providing as a dowry in exchange for a new alliance. It lists one reasonably healthy cow, a pair of geese, 6 bushels of oats, a cooking pot that's only slightly dented, and you. The document is the receipt for a transaction. It's the bill of sale for a human life, a stark, legalistic record that forced historians to accept that for centuries, a daughter's future was just another item to be bartered on the open market. This discovery, made in the dusty archives of English manorial courts, reveals something extraordinary about the brutal pragmatism of medieval life. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists and historians found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in 14th century England. Now dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about medieval marriage. Your world, up until this point, has been small, but it has been yours. It's a world defined by the cyclical rhythm of the seasons and the chime of the church bell. Your home is a wattle and daub hut with a thatched roof that leaks when it rains, which is most of the time. The floor is packed earth, covered with rushes that are periodically swept out and replaced. They do a mediocre job of soaking up spilled things, but they do an excellent job of hiding fleas and smelling vaguely of mildew and old straw. The air inside is a thick, permanent soup of wood smoke from the central hearth, the aroma of boiling pottage, the faint but persistent smell of unwashed bodies, and the nearby livestock who are less roommates and more members of the immediate family. Sometimes the pig wanders in. Nobody minds. He's warmer than most of your relatives. Your days are a chain of chores, linked one to the next from dawn until dusk. You wake before the sun, the cold seeping up from the dirt floor through the thin wool of your tunic. Your first job is to coax the fire back to life. Then it's out to the chickens, scattering feed and checking for eggs, your bare feet sinking into the cold, slick mud that covers everything. And of course, the mud. There's always the mud. It is the fifth element in your world, a constant, grasping presence. After the chickens, it's fetching water from the village well, a heavy wooden bucket in each hand that makes your shoulders ache. You help your mother grind grain with a heavy stone quern, a mind-numbing, circular task that feels like it will never end. You spin wool into thread on a drop spindle, your fingers becoming nimble and calloused. You stir the pottage, a never-ending stew of oats, peas, and whatever vegetables are on hand, that bubbles over the fire all day, every day. It's the fuel that runs your family. It's bland, it's monotonous, but it's hot. This life is hard. It is unforgiving. A bad harvest means a winter of gnawing hunger. A simple cut can fester and kill you. The priest tells you this life is a vale of tears, a test from God to prepare you for the glories of the next. And looking around, you have no reason to doubt him. But it is your life. There's a comfort in its predictability. You know your place. You have your mother, your father, your younger brother. You have friends in the village, other girls your age with whom you can share a moment of laughter while washing clothes in the freezing river, your hands red and raw from the harsh lye soap. These small moments are islands of relief in a sea of labor. Then the conversations begin. They happen at night, after you and your brother are supposedly asleep on your straw pallets. Low murmurs between your parents. You hear your name. You hear the name of a man, Robert. He's a widower. His farm adjoins yours. You've seen him. He's old, maybe 40. He has a beard stained with ale and teeth that are making a strategic retreat from his gums. He already has 3 children two of them older than you are. The thought of him makes your skin crawl. But your parents don't talk about him as a person. They talk about him as a solution. They talk about his 2 oxen. They talk about his field, which is well drained and good for wheat. They talk about combining your inherited 3 acres with his 7. Together, that's 10 acres. A very respectable holding. A holding that could support a family through a harsh winter. A holding that means security. Your father is getting older. His back aches. Your brother is still too young to run the farm alone. An alliance with Robert makes sense. It makes perfect, brutal economic sense. Your feelings on the matter are not part of the calculation. You are a bridge between 2 pieces of land. Your body is the legal instrument that will join them together. You don't get a say. The concept of asking you for your opinion would be as alien as asking the cow for its opinion on being sold at market. You are a dependent, a child under the authority of your father. He has the right, and indeed the duty, to arrange a suitable match for you. A suitable match has nothing to do with compatibility or affection. It is about social and economic advantage. For the nobility, it's about forging political alliances and consolidating vast estates. For a peasant family like yours, it's about survival. It's about ensuring there's enough bread to last until the next harvest. This isn't cruelty in their eyes. It's practicality. It's love of a sort. The love that wants to see the family name and the family farm continue. It's just that your personal happiness is a luxury they simply cannot afford. And so, the deal is struck. You're told one evening, matter-of-factly. Your mother explains it while kneading dough, her knuckles white. You are to be married to Robert. Next month, you will go and live in his house. You will be the mother to his children. You will be his wife. You feel a cold dread pool in your stomach, a feeling of being trapped, of your life suddenly belonging to someone else. You look at your hands, still small, still a child's hands. You try to protest, the words catching in your throat. Your father's look silences you. It's not angry. It's worse. It's final. The decision has been made. This is your path, your duty. And in this world, duty is everything. All you can do is nod, a silent, terrified assent. Your childhood has just officially ended. You are 12 years old, and you are now a commodity whose value has been realized. The transaction is about to be finalized, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. The day of your wedding arrives not with a flurry of excitement, but with the same gray, damp chill as any other Tuesday. There is no white dress, no veil, no cascade of flowers. You wear your best tunic, the one your mother wove last winter. It's a deep, earthy brown, dyed with walnut husks. It's clean, at least, and has the fewest patches. Your mother helps you braid your hair, her fingers surprisingly gentle. It's the only sign of sentiment she allows herself. This is not a celebration. It's a legal proceeding, a public transfer of ownership. The ceremony itself is brutally efficient. It doesn't even happen inside the church. That sacred space is for Mass. Marriages, like other legal and commercial transactions, take place at the church door, on the porch. It's called ***, a public declaration before God and the community. You stand on the cold stone steps, shivering. Robert is beside you, smelling faintly of sour ale and damp wool. The priest stands before you, his Latin words a monotonous drone you don't understand. He asks your father, "Who gives this woman?" Your father steps forward and places your hand in Robert's. His hand is huge, rough, the palm thick with calluses from a lifetime of working the land. It swallows yours completely. You feel a tremor of fear, a finality that steals the air from your lungs. The priest asks Robert if he takes you, and he grunts an affirmative. He then asks you, and you whisper a reply, the sound so faint it's barely audible. There's a brief exchange of a ring, a simple, unadorned band of pewter that he forces onto your finger. It feels heavy and alien. And that's it. You are married. A few villagers who have gathered to watch offer muted congratulations. It's less a joyful occasion and more a community acknowledging a change in the social ledger. Agnes, daughter of John, is now Agnes, wife of Robert. A piece of property has been formally reassigned. There is no feast, no reception. You walk from the church to your new home, his home. It feels wrong. Every step takes you further from the only life you've ever known. Robert's house is slightly larger than your father's, but colder, somehow. It's Messier. The rushes on the floor are old and smell of spilled beer. His 3 children are there, watching you with open suspicion. The oldest, a boy of 14 named Thomas, glares at you with undisguised resentment. You are the same age as his younger sister Eleanor, who simply looks frightened. The youngest, a boy of about 7, just stares with wide, vacant eyes. They are not your new family. They are your new responsibilities. You are their stepmother. At 12, the absurdity of it is a bitter taste in your mouth. You spend the rest of the day in a numb haze. Robert's sister, a stern, pinched-faced woman, shows you the layout of the house, where the grain is stored, how Robert likes his pottage thicker than your mother's, with more salt. She speaks to you not as a new bride, but as a new servant being given her instructions. You are now the domina the mistress of this household, but you have no authority. You are a child placed in charge of other children, a manager who has just been hired and is deeply unqualified for the job. As dusk falls, a deeper, more specific dread begins to build. The children are sent to their sleeping pallets in the small second room of the hut. It is now just you and Robert in the main room, the fire casting long, dancing shadows on the wattle and daub walls. He says nothing. He simply drains his cup of ale, wipes his mouth on his sleeve, and gestures toward the bed. It's not a bed in the modern sense, but a raised wooden frame stuffed with a straw-filled mattress. It is his bed, and now it is yours. What happens next is not about love or passion or even affection. It is another contractual obligation. The church is very clear on this point. A marriage is not truly a marriage until it has been consummated. It is a legal requirement. It is your duty as a wife to submit to your husband, to be available to him for what the church delicately calls the marital debt. There is no concept of consent as we understand it. To refuse would be a sin, a rebellion against both your husband and God. It could even be grounds for an annulment, which would bring shame and ruin upon your family. You have no choice. He is not deliberately cruel, but he is clumsy and indifferent. It is a physical act, devoid of any tenderness. It is something to be done, a box to be checked. For you, it is terrifying, confusing, and painful. You lie there on the scratchy straw mattress, staring up at the smoke-blackened thatch of the roof, and feel a profound sense of dislocation. You are no longer yourself. You are an object, a vessel for duty and obligation. This is your life now. This is what it means to be a wife. The night is long, and the silence that follows is heavier than any sound. You have performed your first official duty, and in the eyes of the law, the church, and everyone you know, this is entirely, completely normal. The thought offers no comfort at all. The morning after your wedding night, the sun rises with an infuriating indifference. Nothing in the world has changed, yet everything for you is different. You are expected to rise and begin your new life, to step into the role of wife and mistress of the house as if you've been doing it forever. The first and most immediate change is a legal one, though you only feel its effects. The moment you said your vows at the church door, you cease to exist as an independent legal entity. You are now what the law calls *femme covered*, a covered woman. It's a quaint, almost gentle-sounding term that hides a brutal reality. Your legal identity has been completely subsumed by your husband's. Think of it as a hostile takeover of your soul, legally sanctioned by the crown. The 3 acres of land that made you so valuable, it's not yours anymore. It's his. He controls it, he profits from it, he can manage it as he sees fit. The cow and geese your father gave as your dowry, his property now. Any wages you might earn from selling surplus eggs or spun wool, legally they belong to him. You cannot enter into a contract. You cannot sue someone in court, nor can you be sued. If you commit a crime, he is held responsible. You are, in the eyes of the law, an extension of his will, a part of his household inventory, somewhere between the livestock and the furniture. You are covered by his legal shadow, and in that shadow, you have no voice of your own. This legal reality shapes every interaction of your day. You are in charge of running the household, but you have no ultimate authority. You must portion out the food for the day, but the grain stores are his. You must manage his children, but they know, with the cruel instinct of the young, that you have no real power over them. Thomas, the 14-year-old, openly defies you. He is bigger than you, stronger than you, and he sees you as an interloper, a child pretending to be his mother. He mocks you, ignores your instructions, and complains about you to his father. Robert, for his part, sees this as a domestic squabble to be ignored, or worse, blames you for failing to keep order. You are expected to command respect you have not been given the means to earn. Your days become a relentless cycle of thankless labor, far more demanding than what you knew in your father's house. You are the first to rise and the last to bed. You cook not for 4, but for 6. The pottage pot is bigger. The bread needs to be baked more often. You milk the cows, churn the butter, feed the pigs, tend the vegetable patch, mend the clothes. You do all the work you did before, but now you also have the added responsibility of caring for Robert's children, who treat you with a mixture of resentment and indifference. You wash their clothes, delouse their hair, and tend to their scraped knees, receiving no thanks in return. You are a mother, a wife, a household manager, and a farmhand, all at the age of 12. There is no time for play, no time for rest, no time for the simple companionship of other girls your age. You have been placed on a treadmill of duty, and it will not stop. The social environment of the village has shifted as well. You are no longer Agnes, the girl from down the lane. You are Robert's wife. When you go to the well, the other women look at you differently. There is a new distance. Some of the older women offer gruff, practical advice on how to stretch a side of bacon or how to treat a fever. They are not unkind, but they are not warm. They are inducting you into the Guild of Wives, a sorority bound by shared hardship and resignation. They see your youth and your fear, and they remember their own. Their faces are a map of your future, lined with worry, hardened by loss, but enduring. You are profoundly lonely. You miss your mother, your own small home, the familiar rhythms of your former life. But you cannot go back. Visiting your family is a privilege, not a right, and requires your husband's permission. You are part of his world now, his clan. Your old ties have been severed. Your husband is your new family, your new master. And he is a stranger. Robert is not a monster. He is simply a man of his time. He is preoccupied with the farm, with the weather, with the price of wool. He sees you as a component of his household, a necessary piece of machinery. He expects you to be obedient, hardworking, and fertile. He provides you with food and a roof over your head. In his mind, this is the entirety of the marital bargain. He does not talk to you about his worries or his thoughts. He does not ask about yours. Intimacy is purely physical, a duty performed in the dark. The rest of the time, you are two separate entities sharing a living space, bound not by affection, but by a legal document and economic necessity. Your life is governed by a quiet, pervasive fear, a fear of a bad harvest, of sickness, of Robert's temper. The law and the church both grant a husband the right to correct his wife. Domestic violence is not a crime. It is a husband's prerogative. As long as he doesn't kill you or maim you permanently, the community will look the other way. It is a private matter between a man and his property. Robert is not an exceptionally violent man, but he has a quick temper, especially after too much ale. A poorly cooked meal, a tearful child, a perceived slight, any of these can earn you a sharp word or a hard slap. You learn to be quiet, to be watchful, to anticipate his moods. You learn to make yourself small, to be invisible. You learn that survival lies in placating the source of power in your life. It's a constant, low-level hum of anxiety that becomes the soundtrack to your existence. You are living in a cage whose bars are made of custom, law, and economic dependence. And you begin to understand that the only way out of this cage is death, his or yours. The odds, you suspect, are not in your favor. Years begin to blur into one another, marked only by the turning of the seasons. You grow, your child's body slowly lengthening into that of a young woman. Your first great challenge, the one that every wife is expected to face, is childbirth. It is the ultimate purpose of your marriage, the reason for your existence, to provide heirs, specifically male heirs, to inherit the land you helped to acquire. At 14, you miss your monthly courses for the first time. The older women in the village nod knowingly. There is no joy, no celebration. It is simply the next phase of your duty. Pregnancy is not a miracle. It is a perilous condition, a 9-month illness that might end in your death. The experience is terrifying. There are no doctors, no prenatal care. You rely on the advice of the village midwife, a woman whose knowledge is a mix of practical experience and folk superstition. She tells you which herbs to avoid, which prayers to say. You continue your daily work, your body growing heavier and more cumbersome. You are always tired. You are always afraid. You've seen childbirth your whole life. You've seen what can go wrong. You've seen women die in agony, their babies dying with them. The statistics are not comforting. 1 in 3 women of your social class might die from complications related to childbirth over the course of their lives. It's a game of Russian roulette you are forced to play again and again. When your time comes, it is a brutal, primal affair. You labor for a day and a night in your smoky hut, attended by the midwife and your stern sister-in-law. It is a world of women, of sweat and pain and whispered encouragement. Robert is sent away. This is not a man's business. In the end, after an agony you thought would split you in two, you give birth to a daughter, a small, wailing, healthy girl. You are flooded with a relief so profound it feels like a physical wave. You survived. But when Robert is told, his reaction is muted. A girl is acceptable, but she cannot inherit the land. She is another future dowry to be paid out, not an asset to be gained. The unspoken message is clear. You must try again. For a son. And you do. A year later, you are pregnant again. This time, it is a boy. He is small and weak. He lives for 3 days, crying with a thin, reedy wail, before a fever takes him. You grieve, but you are not allowed to grieve for long. Infant mortality is a simple fact of life. Nearly half of all children will not live to see their 5th birthday. The church tells you that your son is an angel in heaven, free from the sorrows of this world. It is meant to be a comfort, but it feels like a hollow platitude. You have done your duty, and your duty has turned to dust. You are simply expected to try again. Your body is a vessel, and its purpose is to produce a viable heir. Your personal loss is secondary to your functional failure. The conflicts in your life are not dramatic battles. They are a slow, grinding war of attrition against poverty, disease, and powerlessness. The ever-present threat of domestic violence continues. Robert's correction, is a tool he uses to maintain his authority. You learn the art of de-escalation, the silent language of submission. You learn that a quiet house is a safe house. You also face conflict from within the family. As Thomas, your stepson, grows into a young man, his resentment hardens into a quiet contempt. He sees you as his father's property, not his mother. He is waiting for the day he will inherit everything, the day you will be a widow living on his charity. He is a constant reminder of your precarious position. You feel utterly trapped. The church offers the only official recourse for an abused wife, but it is a laughably ineffective one. You could, in theory, appeal to the ecclesiastical court, but to do so, you would need witnesses willing to testify against the male property owner. You would need to prove that his abuse was excessive and unreasonable, a vague and almost impossible standard to meet. And even if you succeeded, the court would not grant you a divorce. Divorce does not exist. The best you could hope for is a legal separation, where you would be allowed to live apart from him, but could never remarry. You would be cast out, a woman alone, with no property and no means of support. It is a death sentence of a different kind. So, you stay. You endure. There is no escape. You are bound to this man, this life, until death. The only question is, whose death will it be? And what will happen to you then? That question hangs over you, a constant nagging uncertainty in a life already filled with it. But you do not break. You are not just a passive victim in this story. You are a survivor. And survival, in your world, requires a different kind of strength. It's not the strength of rebellion, which would be suicidal. It's the strength of adaptation, of quiet competence, of making yourself indispensable. The years pass. You are no longer a frightened 12-year-old girl. You are 16, then 18, then 20. You have had 4 pregnancies. 2 of your children have survived, your firstborn daughter, and finally a healthy, robust son named John. You have done your primary duty. You have produced a male heir. This achievement, as cold as it sounds, subtly begins to shift the dynamics in the household. You are now the mother of the heir. This grants you a new, unspoken status. You are no longer just Robert's wife. You are John's mother. Your stepson Thomas, while still resentful, must now contend with the fact that his younger half-brother will inherit the primary holding. Your place in the future of this farm is now secure. But your growing influence comes from more than just your fertility. It comes from your sheer competence. You have spent years running this household, and you have become an expert. You are the shoe of this small, miserable family enterprise. You know precisely how much grain is needed to last the winter. You know how to render lard, how to salt pork, how to brew small ale that is safer to drink than the often contaminated water. You become skilled in herbal remedies, learning from the older women which plants can soothe a cough, which can bring down a fever, which can ease the pain of childbirth. You become a repository of practical knowledge, the kind of knowledge that keeps a family alive. Archaeologists see the evidence of your work everywhere, even centuries later. In the excavated remains of a peasant longhouse like yours, they find the tools of your domain. They find the small, circular clay weights from your loom, used for weaving the cloth that clothes your family. They find the spinning whorls, the small, flywheel-like objects that helped you spin wool into thread for hours upon end. They find the charred remains of pottery shards from the very cooking pots you used, still holding the microscopic residues of the pottage you endlessly stirred. These humble, everyday objects are the physical proof of your economic contribution. You are not just a dependent. You are a producer, a vital engine of the household economy. The butter you churn and sell at the market, the thread you spin and trade for a bit of precious salt, these small acts give you a sliver of economic agency. It's not your money, legally, but it is your creation. As you enter your late 20s, Robert is now in his 50s. He is old for this era. The years of hard labor have taken their toll. His back is bent, his breath is short. He can no longer work the fields with the same vigor. He begins to rely on you more and more, not emotionally, but practically. He trusts your judgment about when to plant, which pig to sell, how much of the harvest to store. You are no longer the child he married. You are his partner in the truest medieval sense of the word, a business partner. The power dynamic, which was once so crushingly one-sided, has slowly, imperceptibly started to balance. He doesn't love you, and you certainly don't love him, but a grudging respect has grown between you, born of shared survival. The ultimate turning point comes when Robert falls ill. A winter cough turns into a fever that he cannot shake. He becomes weak, bedridden. It is you who nurses him, you who manages the farm, you who directs your stepson and your own young son in their tasks. You are, for the first time, truly in charge. As it becomes clear that he will not recover, he calls for the priest, not just for last rites, but to dictate his will. This document, like your marriage contract, is the final piece of archaeological proof of your journey. A man's last will and testament was his final act of control, his chance to order his world after he was gone. And in his will, Robert does something significant. He leaves the farm, the 10 acres, the livestock, and the house to your son John. But he makes a crucial stipulation. He names you as the custodian of the property, to manage it and live from its profits until John comes of age. He legally entrusts the entire family enterprise to your care. He doesn't give it to his oldest son, Thomas. He gives it to you. It is the ultimate acknowledgement of your competence. It is not an act of love. It is a sound business decision. He knows you are the one who can keep the farm running, who can ensure its survival for his heir. In his final days, he saw you not as the child he acquired, but as the capable, intelligent woman you have become. After he dies, you hold a wake. You bury him in the churchyard. And then, for the first time since you were 12 years old, you are legally free. You are now a widow. In the eyes of the law, you have transformed. You are no longer a *femme covert*. You are a *femme sole*, a woman alone. It is a status that grants you incredible, unprecedented power. You are now a legal entity. You can own and control property in your own name. You can sign contracts. You can sue in court. The farm that you have managed for years is now, for all practical purposes, yours to command until your son is a man. You are 30 years old. You have survived your husband. You have survived multiple childbirths. You have raised children. You are a landowner, a manager, a respected figure in the village. The other villagers now come to you for advice. You are no longer Robert's wife. You are the widow Agnes, a title of respect. You have agency. You have power. You could, if you wanted to, remarry. And this time, you would be the one with the assets. You would be the one negotiating from a position of strength. Suitors would come not for your father's land, but for yours. The choice would be yours. But as you look out over the muddy fields, feeling the familiar damp chill in the air, you think that perhaps a life as a *femme sole*, a woman alone, is a freedom you are not so quick to give away. You have earned your independence, and you intend to enjoy it. As our journey through the life of Agnes and the reality of medieval marriage concludes tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. The romantic myth of chivalry and love is a comfortable fiction, but the truth of a life like yours, a life of brutal pragmatism and hard-won survival, is infinitely more compelling. It reminds us that people in the past were not characters in a fairy tale. They were complex, intelligent humans navigating an unforgiving world with the tools they had, carving out lives of meaning and agency in the spaces between the harsh lines of law and custom. This is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Good night.